my friend. The suit was filed by attorney Tony Busby. This is the same attorney that filed a suit against Jay-Z and P. Diddy, battery and sexual battery. The plaintiff alleges Sharpe sexually assaulted her several times at the end of 2024.
Not a good look that you did with the shit you did to me.
A Hall of Famer's legacy just imploded, and it's all because of a 19-year-old, a leaked tape, and a $50 million lawsuit that even Disney couldn't sweep under the rug. This isn't just another celebrity scandal. It's a story about power, race play, and how one man's reckless choices turned him into the internet's laughingstock. Let's get into it. It started quietly, until it didn't. In April 2024, a Nevada courtroom became ground zero for Shannon Sharpe's career meltdown. Gabriella Zuniga, a 19-year-old OnlyFans model, filed a bombshell $50 million lawsuit accusing Sharpe of emotional abuse, threats, and something far darker: racially charged roleplay. At first, Sharpe tried to get ahead of the story, leaking texts that he claimed would exonerate him. Instead, they backfired in a spectacular way. The messages revealed Gabriella writing things like, "Put a big black baby in me," and referencing humiliating racial stereotypes. But here's the catch: Sharpe only shared her side of the conversation. Fans immediately noticed his replies were suspiciously missing. Why? Because behind the scenes, insiders say those hidden texts told a much different story. The missing messages were said to prove that it was Sharpe himself who was pushing the race play narrative from the start. He wasn't just a passive participant in a twisted fantasy. He was orchestrating the entire thing. The absence of his replies sent a clear message. He was selectively hiding evidence that could potentially expose him as the instigator. This is where things took a darker turn. What could have been a simple dispute between two adults quickly morphed into something far more damaging for Sharpe. A full-blown scandal with racial undertones that hit a nerve in Hollywood and across the internet. While Sharpe thought he could control the narrative, the leaked texts, along with the shocking claims in Gabriella's lawsuit, have left the public questioning whether there was more to his behavior than just a failed fantasy gone wrong. Disney doesn't play games with its image. The second those texts went viral, ESPN's higher-ups held emergency meetings. A source close to the network put it bluntly: Sharpe was done the moment Disney heard "big black guy choke small white woman" in that audio clip. In Hollywood, optics are everything, and the sheer weight of that phrase was enough to make executives at ESPN hit the panic button. For Disney, known for its family-friendly brand, having any association with content that even remotely suggested violence or racial overtones was a non-starter. The backlash would have been immediate, massive, and unforgiving. Sharpe may have thought he could weather the storm, but once that audio clip, unmistakably capturing his words, hit the public's ears, it was clear his career at ESPN was irreversibly damaged. Sharpe, trying to salvage some control of the narrative, insisted that he was stepping away temporarily to clear his name. But sources inside the network paint a different picture. One that paints his departure as anything but voluntary. According to them, there was no debate, no negotiations, and certainly no second chances. Sharpe was forced out. The powers that be at ESPN weren't just distancing themselves from a man who had been the face of their programming for years. They were pulling the plug on any association, hoping to mitigate the damage as quickly as possible. Even his longtime colleague, Stephen A. Smith, threw some subtle shade on his podcast. "You can't hang with these young girls at 56. Act your age, not your IQ." The words stung, especially coming from someone who had long been a close ally. But the underlying message was clear. The ESPN family had already moved on from Sharpe. Whether it was out of concern for their own reputations or simply to avoid being caught in the fallout, they had no intention of letting this scandal become their problem. This scandal isn't just about money or fame. It's about a kink that spiraled out of control, leaving a trail of chaos behind it. Gabriella Zuniga's lawsuit alleges that Shannon Sharpe paid her thousands of dollars to engage in race play, a controversial and highly charged fetish where partners act out racist power dynamics. While some might dismiss these allegations as a freak incident or a misunderstanding, the evidence Gabriella has presented is far from flimsy. The receipts are damning. The texts that Sharpe himself leaked to the public were supposed to paint him in a favorable light, but instead, they raised serious questions. Why would a teenager suddenly start talking about buckwheat and greasy lips, racially charged terms that have long been steeped in humiliating stereotypes, out of nowhere? It doesn't make sense unless these kinds of conversations had been part of a much darker, pre-established dynamic. But the real kicker in this story is the fact that Sharpe never leaked his own side of the conversation. Why? What was those messages that he didn't want anyone to see? According to insiders, those hidden texts could have shown Sharpe actively pushing the race play narrative, potentially revealing his own active participation in a kink that many would consider deeply problematic. Without the full context, the narrative was left incomplete, and many fans immediately started questioning Sharpe's intentions and character. And then, there's comedian Cat Williams. If you look back at his 2023 appearance on Sharpe's Club Shay Shay podcast, warning about white women takes on a chilling significance. During the interview, Williams casually said, "Mess with the wrong one, and she'll ruin your life." At the time, Sharpe laughed it off, seemingly brushing it aside as just another joke from the unpredictable comedian. But now, those words seem eerily prophetic. Sharpe, months later, is out of a job, his career in tatters. Kat's ominous warning was far more than just stand-up material. It was a glimpse into something that was about to unfold in dramatic fashion. Now, as Sharpe faces the fallout of his choices, it's clear that the reality of his situation is far darker than any punchline. The most shocking twist in this entire saga? An audio clip that has sent shockwaves through the internet. In it, Shannon Sharpe says, "I might choke you in public. Big black guy, small white woman." Gabriela Zuniga's legal team released this clip as evidence to support their claims that Sharpe's behavior was premeditated and threatening. In response, Sharpe and his defenders have tried to claim that this was nothing more than roleplay, a consensual kink between two adults. But fans? They're not buying it. The audio doesn't feel like a private conversation. It sounds scripted. The words are rehearsed, the tone chilling, and the context far from innocent. The racial overtones are impossible to ignore. It's one thing to engage in roleplay that involves mutual consent between equals, but this clip showcases a glaring power imbalance. A 56-year-old NFL legend versus a 19-year-old woman he reportedly paid to degrade him. The public reaction has been swift and unforgiving. Social media has erupted with users questioning the authenticity of Sharpe's defense. One Reddit user put it bluntly, "If you're paying someone to humiliate you, you've already lost." And they're not wrong. The notion that someone, especially a man of Sharpe's stature, could be so willing to be humiliated and degraded is hard for many to digest, and even harder to rationalize as simple consensual kink. It's not just the disturbing nature of the audio that has people questioning Sharpe's defense. It's the sheer disconnect between his public persona as a successful athlete, TV personality, and former Hall of Famer and the image of a man engaging in this kind of behavior with a teenager. Fans are left to wonder, if this really was just roleplay, why did it have to be so extreme? Why were these racialized dynamics at the core? And perhaps most importantly, why did it all feel so calculated and scripted, like part of a deeper pattern of manipulation? Sharpe's final attempt to salvage his tarnished reputation? Playing the victim card. In a tearful Instagram video, he claimed that lawyer Tony Busby was targeting him because he's a successful black man. He went as far as comparing himself to Jay-Z, suggesting that his fall from grace was part of a larger systemic issue that unfairly targets prominent black figures. But rather than finding sympathy, Sharpe's words only fueled the fire. The internet's response? Brutal. Comments flooded in, dismantling his narrative. One of the most biting responses read, "You paid a white girl to call you racial slurs, now you're crying racism?" The hypocrisy was impossible to ignore. How could Sharpe, a man accused of paying for and participating in racially charged roleplay, suddenly shift the conversation to racism when he was the one who appeared to be perpetuating it? Even some of Sharpe's own supporters turned on him. One viral tweet captured the collective sentiment. "This isn't systemic oppression. This is a 56-year-old man who forgot to act his age." People weren't buying the narrative of racial victimhood. They saw Sharpe's actions as an undeniable betrayal of the very values he once stood for. It wasn't about race or a larger conspiracy. It was about a man, well past his prime, making reckless choices that shattered his career and reputation. By trying to deflect the blame and frame himself as a victim, Sharpe only further alienated the public. Instead of acknowledging the gravity of his actions and the harm they caused, he leaned into an already debunked defense. It's no wonder the backlash was so severe. What started as a scandalous affair involving questionable behavior now became an issue of accountability, personal responsibility, and the refusal to face uncomfortable truths. The more Sharpe tried to shift the narrative, the more the internet reminded him, "You dug your own grave." Let's be clear. Sharpe's career isn't just damaged. It's obliterated. ESPN didn't just pull him from their lineup. They erased him entirely from upcoming NFL coverage. His name has been scrubbed from all programming, and any mention of his involvement with the network is now a distant memory. The once beloved analyst, who was a mainstay on sports broadcasts, has become persona non grata. His podcast, Club Shay Shay, which had become a platform for candid, often controversial conversations, saw its sponsors vanish overnight. Brands don't want to be associated with a figure embroiled in such a scandal, and advertisers quickly jumped ship, severing ties with the show. What was once a highly respected voice in sports commentary is now just a faded echo. Even his long-running ED pill ads, which used to pop up regularly across various platforms, have now turned into memes. They've been mocked relentlessly on social media, with people laughing at the irony of a man whose personal life has spiraled into chaos trying to sell solutions to his own alleged problems. But here's where the story takes another dark turn. Gabriella might not be done. Rumors have begun circulating that she's sitting on a video that makes the leaked audio sound tame in comparison. If that tape drops, it won't just be another layer to the scandal. It will be the final nail in the coffin. Sharpe won't just be a tabloid headline. He'll become a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, toxic fetishes, and how one man's recklessness destroyed everything he built. If the video is real, and if it's as damaging as sources claim, Sharpe will not just fade into irrelevance. He'll be marked for good, remembered not as an NFL legend, but as a warning for anyone who thinks they can escape the consequences of their actions. This isn't just about Sharpe. It's about what happens when fame, ego, and poor judgment collide. Cat Williams and Monique tried to warn him, "Date your age. These young girls will wreck you." He ignored them, and now he's proof that even legends can fall. So, was Sharpe set up? Or did he torch his own career? The answer's probably somewhere in the middle. But one thing's certain, the internet won't let him forget it. Drop a comment. Should ESPN have fired him faster? Or was Sharpe unfairly cancelled? Let's debate. And if you think this story's wild, wait until tomorrow. We're diving into the next scandal they're desperate to hide.
Not a good look that you do with the shit you did to me.
When a widely disseminated podcast appearance devolves into a full-scale legal catastrophe, the consequences can be profound. Shannon Sharpe, a former NFL icon, currently confronts grave allegations of sexual assault, SA, while comedian Cat Williams refuses to remain silent regarding the controversy. The digital sphere has become inundated with discourse, catalyzed by the emergence of clandestine recordings. Amidst this volatile environment, Sharpe's projected $100 million professional trajectory now faces existential jeopardy. In this analysis, we critically unpack the escalating scandal that has polarized public sentiment and destabilized celebrity narratives. A brief contextualization is necessary, as the developments of the past week have sent seismic tremors throughout Hollywood's cultural landscape. A highly publicized lawsuit has thrust Gabriella Zuniga, a 19-year-old fitness influencer, into the media spotlight. At the heart of her legal complaint lies an array of allegations against Shannon Sharpe, who, at the relevant time, was 54 years old. The accusations she has articulated are profoundly unsettling. Zuniga asserts that throughout the duration of their 2-year relationship, Sharpe engaged in acts of sexual assault, SA, manipulation, and persistent threats, allegedly designed to maintain her isolation and compliance. Repeated requests for cessation during intimate encounters, she contends, were flagrantly disregarded, undermining any notion of genuine consent. Furthermore, Zuniga accuses Sharpe of surreptitiously recording their private interactions, weaponizing their intimacy as a means of coercive control. The gravity of the accusations intensifies with claims that Sharpe purportedly threatened to unalive Zuniga should she disclose her whereabouts to external parties, thereby cultivating an environment of pervasive fear and dependence. Particularly striking to observers is the revelation that Sharpe's youngest offspring surpasses Zuniga in age, a fact that has amplified concerns regarding potential predatory behavior. Public discourse rapidly coalesced around the term grooming to describe the situation, notwithstanding Zuniga's legal status as an adult. While the age differential is not, in itself, unlawful, the described relational dynamics suggest a profound ethical breach, invoking widespread debate over consent, power asymmetry, and emotional exploitation within celebrity culture. Sharpe did not remain passive amidst the controversy. Rather, he launched an aggressive response intended to reframe the emerging narrative. His legal representatives retaliated forcefully, unveiling a series of highly explicit text messages purportedly sent by Gabriella during their relationship. Communications that were anything but discreet. These texts, laden with graphic role-play propositions, including the use of dog collars, asphyxiation fantasies, and vivid allusions to baby gravy, paint a portrait far removed from innocence. According to Sharpe's defense team, these disclosures substantiate a pivotal claim. Their relationship was not characterized by coercion, but by mutual and enthusiastic participation in elaborate fantasies, allegedly initiated by Gabriella herself. In their assessment, the lawsuit constitutes a deliberate fabrication, an extortion scheme engineered by Gabriella in collaboration with her attorney, Tony Busby, aimed at extracting a $50 million settlement from Sharpe. Moreover, Sharpe's attorneys have sought to discredit Busby's credibility by highlighting his professional history. Busby, they argue, possesses a well-documented pattern of pursuing litigation against high-profile figures. Most notably, he previously filed a sexual assault lawsuit against Jay-Z, which ultimately was dismissed prior to reaching trial. To Sharpe's camp, this repetition signals a calculated strategy. A legal operator navigating celebrity circles in search of lucrative out-of-court resolutions. Compounding the controversy is the highly suspicious timing of the allegations. Sharpe maintains that the eruption of this scandal is far from coincidental, noting that it coincides precisely with his reported negotiations for a $100 million podcast agreement, potentially the most financially significant milestone of his career. The implication is clear. The scandal's sudden emergence is interpreted as a strategic maneuver to undermine or exploit his imminent success. Regardless of perspective, the conflict has escalated from a public relations crisis to a confrontation of existential proportions for Sharpe's professional future. At the very moment when it appeared that the scandal had reached its nadir, Tony Busby, the incendiary attorney propelling the allegations, unleashed an even more devastating revelation. An audio recording, swiftly disseminated across social media platforms, captured Sharpe allegedly issuing threats against Gabriella in language that left little room for misinterpretation. In the recording, Sharpe's tone is menacingly subdued, resembling a growl as he states, "I'm gonna choke the out of you." Following this already disturbing statement, he compounds the discomfort with a racially charged remark, "Big black guy choking a small white woman. Not a good look." The internet, predictably, reacted with ferocity. Within moments of the audio's release, a male